The thing I was playing with mostly over the weekend that I thought I'd spend a little bit of time talking about today is the quote vibe coding tool Bolt. I think we've mentioned it before. Maybe we've even shown it a little bit. I can't remember exactly, but I have not spent much time with it. So I thought I would go do that very thing and toss in some projects very similar to how I handle my workflow with Lovable. I know I've mentioned to you before that I use Lovable quite a bit and have had a lot of success with it. There's reasons why it can only get me so far in terms of a fully productionized system, but for putting together something pretty quickly, even using APIs and that kind of thing, avoiding cores issues and stuff like that, it's usually able to do it. But I know that there's other tools out there that can do similar things, and Bolt is one of them. Another one that I wanted to look at this weekend too, and I did, is from Vercel, and I believe they refer to it as V0. Is that correct? In terms of
I've not heard anyone say it out loud, so I'm not sure if it's D0. It could be VO, I think maybe.
right.
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Either way, Vercel's got a tool that works very similar. And yeah, decided to go play around with all three of those and just get a better understanding of how they work and then share that feedback with you. So the first thing you'll notice with Bolt here is if you've used any of those vibe coding tools, let's say Lovable, it looks very similar, right? You've got your chat sort of window here in the middle. You drop in your prompt, and then assumptions are made that you'll probably get loaded into something that looks like an IDE, and then it's going to begin building whatever it is that you asked it for. Now, my process is to go with these tools because you get a limited number of prompts, limited number of interactions. Obviously, when it's a free tool, there's going to be some sort of cap somewhere. So I've gotten in the habit of spending a lot of time on the front end, making sure that the prompt that I put into these things is polished up exactly how I want it. So I'll have a conversation with Claude or Gemini, ChatGPT. All of them are doing great jobs for me in terms of helping me establish a very thorough prompt so that I can get from zero to almost production pretty quickly, including like packages and libraries and whether to use Tailwind, all that kind of stuff. And so I did that with Bolt and came in and was able to put something together pretty quickly without any complications at all.
I should say full disclosure, I do pay for Bolt, so I'm very interested to hear your feelings because I've got pros and cons, of course.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see how you use it.
So I put together this sort of fictional e-commerce site. I feel like e-commerce sites have a little bit more complexity to them. They're probably calling several different APIs. Might be a database involved. There's probably some user authentication, some stuff that's not necessarily one shot in many
Right.
cases. Although I will say I have to give Lovable some credit. I have thrown some things at it, maybe asking it to interact with definitely one, sometimes two different APIs, and they'll get there on the first shot. Although lately they've all struggled with that. So I don't know if I'm asking it to do them to do a little bit more complicated and complex things, or something's changing in the back.
Maybe they're optimizing, routing the models a little bit different, some more
Yeah.
configuration changes.
Yeah, exactly. But let's go through the interface here on Bolt and just talk about what it's offering here. Because you pointed out a few things to me that I actually didn't catch at first glance. And obviously, we have our agent conversation over here, and I'm not going to go through that because that's pretty much exactly like any other experience. I did mention this is a one shot. It got me from dropping in this really long prompt to building out what over here on the preview, which is pretty good in terms of what it looks like, right? So I'll move this chat out of the way and you can see that it's switched into this IDE display here, which is also similar to all the others. Although I'll say stylistically, I think I like this one better. Maybe I need to zoom out a little bit, but I do like the way that this looks. And the thing that you pointed out to me, I didn't know existed was down here in the bottom. We've got this console that tells you what's been happening in terms of the build and that kind of thing, it sounds like. But then we've also got a terminal that we can come into
Right.
and interact with the back end. So that seems a little bit unique, right? I don't believe that's offered in Lovable. If I was to pop over into my Lovable interface, we can get into the code, move the chat out of the way, but that's basically it as far as I can tell. Have you?
Yeah, Lovable might have a console that shows you the errors. I think if you go back to the other view, it feel like a little drop down.
Excuse me.
Maybe that one? Oh, my apologies. I thought there was. I could be wrong. V0 definitely has just a console and no terminal. I do find though that a lot of times when I'm approaching these as a dev, and it might be that they want to hide the console and the terminal, even though like you and I want them.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's design choices. Those are features, not bugs, where they're just trying to make it a little bit simpler. But honestly, if we're talking about getting this to a production system and
Right.
doing more than just vibe coding, like those are essential things I have to
At some point
not
in time, you'll need that handoff, right? Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but since we're poking around trying to find stuff within Lovable, I'll point out some of the things that I have used and know they're in here, so I can at least let you know about that. I always, as a paying user of Lovable, I don't want to have the badge on there that this is a project from them for
Right.
every one of them.
1, 2.
Yeah. Enable that, disable that. I can rename the project, delete it, the usual stuff. I could also put an actual domain name on here. And with Lovable, I'll say that the process for doing this, to connecting a domain that you have, especially if you're using like one of the already well-established providers, GoDaddy is the one I use. It's a couple of clicks and you've got your domain connected and working. It's like
Oh, that's cool.
one of the easiest workflows I've ever experienced.
Sorry to interrupt. I haven't tried that part because I assumed it was going to be like pulling teeth. That's good.
Mhm. It's easier than going in and doing it in DNS settings, whether you're using Cloudflare or whatever. It's seriously probably 2 or 3 clicks on just buttons and it handles everything. The analytics is similar to, it's not going to show anything because it just hasn't been used, but it's similar to what I discovered over in Bolt, is that it's really more about page views and where the visitors are coming in, that kind of thing. It's not analytics in the broader sense that we might be thinking about it. So there are some limitations I would see there.
So they mean like Google Analytics. Sorry to put
It
it
is a
on
little
the
close to like your Google Analytics, but even then, it's pretty minimal. I'm not sure what's actionable from it, what you're going to do with that type of stuff, especially maybe in a vibe coding sense, like you've put the word out with a project of yours and you're seeing that you're getting some interest. Now you're ready to move it to a new platform. I'm not sure what it's supposed to tell you to do, but it's nice that we at least have something moving in that direction. This knowledge thing, though, I thought was interesting because this is like setting up the rules, you might say, in Cursor or the
Right.
Claude.markdown file, where you just establish like what's the guideline for building this project, best practices, that kind of thing. I've not used this. For the most part, like I said, do have a conversation with a different LLM. I bring that over in here, drop it in, and then it's telling in the instructions, in the prompt, what packages to use, what libraries to use, that kind of thing. But I do think that this could be useful in a lot of situations. And then security is also something that's, I feel like, pretty unique to Lovable. I don't know that I've seen it in the other ones. This isn't something I've necessarily used because I haven't had any kind of vulnerabilities or anything pop up just yet, but I like that it's in here.
I like that you say that because I've had nothing but vulnerabilities and packages in my coding apps I've used. But now that being said, I've only got a couple from Lovable that I've connected to GitHub. But this is like a constant concern for me, at least, is package versions that are like a year or more out of date is one of those things that I'm constantly struggling with, especially in the front end side where I'm not really that familiar with all of the packages and how they work, the matrix maybe of versions. But that for me is actually a really cool feature to see.
Yeah, definitely. And another mandatory thing, it's a non-starter or a project to become like a really serious project if you don't have that kind of stuff. So yeah, and then the other things here, which are seemingly becoming just table stakes for all of them, there are integrations into Supabase and GitHub. Supabase, we were talking about before the recording, has become really just an awesome go-to tool for not just vibe coding, but any kind of project that you need to get something up and running, proof of concept. And then from there, you can scale. And they offer, it seems like in our quick research, they offer 2 free projects, your account at a time. So that might become a challenge if you're trying to build several things
Right.
once, maybe even across several different vibe coding platforms. I'm not sure how what's stepping on toes there, how that all integrations are playing well with each other. So some questions there, but yeah, so Lovable's been great. And then it seems like over here in Bolt under the integrations, they've recently added Supabase and the Strike. I don't know how much recently. I did see that I don't know if I still have it up, but we can go find it. They made an announcement last week that they've launched Bolt Cloud, which we can chat a little bit about, but Right. You probably know this interface a little bit better than I. Anything else in here that you think is worthwhile pointing out?
Yeah, listen, and as somebody who perhaps by mistake assumed that this would all be easy, I tried to build my own. Bolt has Bolt.diy is their open source version of Bolt. So I assumed how hard could it be just to fork something, set up all these functions. I will say one really nice thing about Bolt New is not only can you have the code on the left-hand side and the code on the right, but it's also got that pop-up window or pop-out window. So if you want to actually make this full screen and get rid of this, I find that pretty handy. And in fact, in that little bar, there's a few other things that you can do. One of them is you can like select elements on the page. So if you want to say, hey, the specific area right here is broken, or if you want to make it full screen, there's a button for that as well. A lot of those little things aren't obvious unless you played around with them. The other one, especially in Bolt, because you can make mobile apps as well as desktop apps, which I will say is categorically broken. It has been broken for a while. It's Expo and it's the build definitions are kind of a little bit messed up. But if you're building an Expo project, you want to be able to see what the interface looks like in that narrow mode as well as the wide mode, which is pretty handy, in fact. And I think it's the only one of the four that I've used, being Lovable, Bolt, Replit, and V0. I think it's the only one that makes mobile apps. I will say I've yet to get one actually working, but the promise is there. And I think if you connected it to GitHub and then took the Expo project from there, you'd be able to hit the get a touchdown or what have you with your app. But those are the things that kind of stick out to me. So it's mostly this bar is a little bit different. You can hide the made with bolts on the bottom right, that's similar to Lovable if you pay. Again, I am a paying client, so I've played around with this quite a bit. Mostly, I think because I love the UI and the look and the feel and the way Bolt works in general. But unfortunately, I will say that I've rarely, if ever, gotten an actual working app out of Bolt without having to connect it to GitHub and then going massaging the code myself. It's neither here nor there. It could be the time that I used it, the model that was in use. Every time they release a new update, I tend to hop in as well. And who knows if the back end is busy or what have you. But I do have a lot of hope. And again, I think my wallet speaks volumes the fact that I'm trying to get this working. But I will say some of the niceties for me are being able to get into the console, being able to get into an actual working terminal is pretty fantastic. And then being able to sync back and forth in GitHub, both when you're starting a new project, so you can import from GitHub with Bolt and then say, hey, work on this for me, which is actually pretty cool. The other is after you've come up with something, you can then connect to GitHub, which is pretty interesting. I've
Okay.
not played with that knowledge base that you were just looking at, for example. I didn't know that existed. That looks awesome.
Yeah. So it looks like there's global instructions and also project instructions.
That's
And it
fantastic.
appears that I don't know if this is preloaded because of the prompt I gave it.
It seems so, yeah.
Yeah, I would assume so too, just based on some of the specifics that are in here. Interesting. Okay. And then we pointed out that it's been, or that there was an announcement, I guess, about Boulder
Right.
World. We were looking at this and just chatting about what the title for starters, what's solving the vibe coding fatal flaw. And I think, what it's alluding to here, and as you read through it, is it's really trying to get these vibe coded projects to be a little bit larger scale productionized systems. Wouldn't you agree that's the goal for?
Yeah, and so I think what's happening, at least in the vibe coding space, is I see a lot of people actually getting success. And then the question is, what next? So if I created like a dev app or maybe even staging, I've got things set up to a way where it's marked out enough that I know I could actually use this. I've had some friends look at it. We're playing with some tests. And the question is, what is the next step? How do I then take this and actually make this into something that maybe it's blue green or something like that? You're testing a little sub area of your site, or maybe it's a new property. But the question is like, where is it hosted? And previously it was like, bring your own. So connect to GitHub, figure it out. Go on off on your own, choose your own adventure, find some hosting, find a domain name and get it done. I like the fact that the Vercels and Netlifys of the world are getting involved in this because I do feel like they are like a good fit, similar to Superbase or maybe Neon or Ivan would be a good place on the database side. Netlify and Vercel for me feel like the sort of next step. If you're going to throw something into a production-like environment to get real traffic with a real domain name, a real SSL cert, a TLS cert, what does that look like? It feels like Netlify is probably the best place to go.
Mhm. Yeah, we've talked about Netlify in the past a lot. I've used it for quite a few projects. It's solid. The free offering is great. I like this move with integrating into Netlify. I think it opens up a lot of other stuff like the functions and just there's so many reasons why I choose or why anybody chooses Netlify. And now
Mhm.
some of that's going to be brought into Bolt, which is nice. This it outlines some of those things. here. The one thing that I thought really jumped out to me, though, I have to admit, is that kicking things off here, starting off today, every new bulk project is going to include hosting with SEO, custom domains. I think that's great stuff. But if we're talking about going from vibe code to production, those are not at the top of my list of concerns. I don't know. Am I being too critical here?
I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of us, at least one of the things is, listen, we've been building apps for years. So I think we've got definite opinions and experience to back up those opinions in terms of what we need next. I do wonder if people maybe just getting started with apps. I think we've talked before about the Tesla car ride back from an airport and how somebody will try to pitch their app to you. That type of person who's just getting started with app building, they've got a great idea. They may actually want to know what are the numbers today versus yesterday. That might be SEO might be important to them, or maybe they read a blog post that refers to it. I think a lot of us will see the snake oil in SEO and maybe run the other way when you see that word. So it could be just a case of maturity level in the target audience.
Yeah, I think it is. I know I've been doing this quote vibe coding for a while now. So I guess Tink came up with the practice, and SEO has never crossed my mind on any of it. And a lot of that also just has to do with the sort of the state of search. I don't know search engine optimization is the move anymore. I
Right.
don't know that's going to help me in any way. And even if it could, I don't know that I can really measure it. So
Right.
I don't think that's at the top of my list of concerns for productionizing the system. What I do need to know, though, is like what we saw in Bolt, is some way to see when these fail, when the build fails, when something goes wrong. I got to be able to see that stuff. That's what keeps me from going from a hobby project to a real thing. That and the whole CI/CD process, which is all baked in now, and the fact that we get Netlify, all that kind of stuff, I think is great. Although I will point out, at least according to this announcement that they've got here, the hosting and SEO stuff is available now. The custom domains is available now, but the unlimited databases, which is also, I feel like the language might be a little, I'm not sure about there. The
Right.
authentication and user management, that's another one that's not quite here yet. They're calling these all beta exclusives, so they're coming. The secure payments, which is actually a Stripe integration. Some of these we're assuming are being pulled into this Netlify relationship.
It feels like it. I could be wrong, but it does
Well,
sound familiar.
you're seeing these same things over in all of the tools too. So it's just, I guess, maybe converging on similar tooling. Stripe's obviously not the only payment processing tool out there,
Right.
but maybe one of the more popular ones, the easiest to work with in terms of integrating in. And then the analytics stuff we talked about. It's really just page views, visitors, traffic sources. Again, I know maybe I have some feelings around dashboards and stuff, but that's not going to help me in confidence that this, whatever I'm building is ready for the real world. So I don't know. There's more I would need to know if we're talking about, okay, now you're ready to go and put it out there in production. I have to push back and say, this doesn't quite tell me enough. The file storage stuff, I think we both agree, not use in every project, but there are times where you do need to like have a place for people, your users to put stuff,
Yeah.
or for your app to put stuff even. And then the functions, definitely, like this
Yes.
should be table stakes on all of them at this point too, because a lot of these applications become complicated enough that they need functions and they need their own little APIs that talk to themselves and other things. And there's just more that goes on behind the scenes, and that's where the functions come in. And it's nice to see that evolving into it as well. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the bulk cloud announcement is cool with a few things in there, but I will just say that this does not make me feel better about moving into production with any of my projects just yet. So, yeah. And then we haven't spent a lot of time on Vercel, but they've got a lot of the
Mhm.
similar stuff. You can go into the premiere preview and then you can get into the code view.
Now they have a console. I think top right is where it
Yeah.
hides,
Yep.
but I don't think they have a terminal, at least in my
Yeah.
when
I
I
have
I
not
I
seen
haven't
the
come across it.
terminal as well. Here you can just see fetched a big JSON blob that's come in. So nice to see. It's really more like the browser console, experience of what did the browser pull in. That's good to see, but it's only part of the picture.
And the real difference I see here, compared to say a code server or what have you is in fact that preview window. So this is one of those, that browser within a browser, because you're talking about cores in the beginning of this. It is actually a non-trivial thing to do. Again, having tried to do this on my own, it's actually quite difficult to get the code to publish into a nested browser that doesn't have a slew of security issues. So I'm still struggling with that personally. I think the other thing that's nice here that Vercel, I see now has, it looks like it's got an element selector as well. It may have had it before Bolt. I apologize. I think it's just to the left of that there, or right to the right of the number. It's like the arrow with it. Yeah. I think you can actually go in and click on stuff and say, hey, this should be better, different font here, more contrast, what have you. I find these very handy in Windsurf, for example, which has a preview mode that isn't as good, frankly, as a Lovable or a V0 or going into Bolt, but it is serviceable when it works. The problem is the tool call, and the model may not always understand that Windsurf does have, in fact, a built-in preview mode that it can use, and as a result, doesn't always work. But I do use the heck out of this because, again, I don't understand front end. So for me, being able to pinpoint an element or a form on the page and actually start inspecting it or talking about how it works is really handy for me, especially when something like login's not working, which is pretty common.
The one thing I really liked about Vercel's from the others, because the others don't have this, is this one right here, the environment levels. This is perfect. This is exactly what I needed to be able to set this up to use Discogs and Stripe and more. I think the other ones in here, if I was using Etsy, there's, as you can see, there's a few things that are being called and have their own secrets, and to have that all in here is really nice. The
Now,
integration.
I solved this with the other two, but I wonder how you've done it. Because what I had to do was go into Netlify, set them up manually, trigger a build, see if it works, go back into Netlify, and the back and forth process is actually, it's trivial, but it's non-trivial in terms of the amount of time it takes. And it's actually just, it's very frustrating is what ends up having. It's got a lot of friction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're coming a long way. I will say I really like all the tools in their own ways. I'm spending most of my time in Lovable still, but it's really just to come up with some ideas and hobby projects and things that'll end up in my side project cemetery one day, I'm sure. But I would really love it if I don't have to move away from that tooling. Something actually were to become a bigger project that I want to scale out. But we're not there yet. Despite the announcements in SEO, it's not going to help me. But at least people are thinking about it, or people are asking people to think about it, is maybe the right question. Now we just need to get the right people in the conversation. And yeah, but it's nice to see it coming along.
Absolutely. As a paying client, I'm happy to see that you're playing around with it. I'd love to see them succeed, but I do feel like this update, it needed a little bit more meat.
Everything's incremental. A step in the right direction is good. I haven't seen a step in the wrong direction yet, but I think one thing that all of us as just folks in this industry have to be careful of is not disappointing the people we seek to help, with developers. And if we're telling them one thing, telling them that we now have this thing available and it'll do this thing and solve this problem for you, it really needs to do that, or you've lost their trust and they're not going to come back. We just have to be real careful about what we're promising. And that's my last thought on that. And yeah, that's all for this week. And I'll talk to you later. Right?
Okay.
See you.